The signal came through space like a scream in the darkness. It bounced between stars, weak and broken, carrying words and languages that most humans had never heard before. The message was simple and terrifying. Help us. They are coming. Is dying. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the strange symbols scroll across his screen. His ship was small compared to the massive vessels that other species flew between the stars. Humans were new to space travel. The alien races called them a minor species, barely worth talking to. But Jake had been patrolling the edge of human space for 3 years, and he had never seen anything like this message. "Captain, I'm getting more signals," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. She was the ship's language expert, one of the few humans who could understand alien speech. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls as more messages flooded in. "They're coming from all over the outer rim. It's different species, different languages, but they're all saying the same thing." Jake leaned forward in his chair. The outer rim was where the peaceful alien races lived. They were traders and farmers, scientists and artists. They had no armies, no weapons. They had lived in peace for thousands of years. "What are they saying, Amy?" Amy's face was pale as she looked at her screen. "They're talking about something called the Void Swarm. It's eating entire worlds, Captain. Not just destroying them, eating them. The life, the matter, everything. And it's getting stronger with each world it takes." The bridge fell silent. Jake's crew had seen strange things in space, but this was different. It sounded impossible. Commander Lisa Torres, Jake's second-in-command, walked over to Amy's station. Lisa was tough and smart, the kind of officer who never panicked, but Jake could see worry in her eyes. "How many worlds?" Lisa asked. Amy checked her screen again. "According to these messages, at least 40 systems have gone dark in the last 3 months. That's billions of people, Lisa. Maybe more." Jake stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, space looked normal. Stars twinkled in the distance. There were no signs of danger. But somewhere out there, something was destroying entire civilizations. Have any of the major species responded? "The Galactic Council. It's the strange part," Amy said. "The Altarians sent their entire fleet to stop it 3 weeks ago. They had the most advanced ships in the galaxy. Signals say the fleet just ... disappeared. No distress calls, no debris, nothing. It's like they never existed." Chief Engineer Ben Parker looked up from his station. Ben was older than the rest of the crew, and he had worked on ships his whole life. "Captain, if something can make the Altarian fleet disappear without a trace, what chance do we have? We're just one small human ship." Jake understood Ben's fear. The Altarians were ancient and powerful. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of human science. Their ships could destroy planets if they wanted to. If the swarm had beaten them so easily, then humanity stood no chance in a direct fight. But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him long ago. His grandfather had been a soldier in Earth's last great war, before humans reached the stars. He had said that sometimes the biggest enemy wasn't the strongest. Sometimes it was just the most hungry. "Amy, can you decode more of these messages? Want to know everything about this swarm?" The next 6 hours, Amy worked on translating the alien signals. The crew gathered around as she shared what she learned. The picture that emerged was worse than they had imagined. The swarm wasn't just one enemy. It was thousands, maybe millions of ships working together like a single mind. But these weren't normal ships. They were made from the bodies and technology of the species the swarm had already destroyed. Every time it ate a civilization, it became stronger and smarter. The aliens called it essence drain. The swarm didn't just kill people. It sucked out their life force, their knowledge, their very souls. The empty bodies that remained somehow became part of the swarm. Mindless servants that helped it grow even larger. Worse still, the swarm was learning. Each species it destroyed taught it new ways to fight, new technologies to use. It had started as something simple, but now it combined the best weapons and ships from dozens of advanced civilizations. "The messages are getting weaker," Amy said. "Sadly, I think the swarm is getting closer to the core worlds. The big alien civilizations are trying to fight it, but they're losing badly." Jake walked back to his captain's chair. He thought about Earth, safe and far away from the outer rim. Humanity was so new to the galaxy that most aliens barely knew they existed. Maybe the swarm wouldn't even notice them. Maybe humans could just hide and wait for it to pass. But Jake couldn't stop thinking about those signals. Millions of voices, crying for help as their worlds died. Children and families being torn apart by something they couldn't understand or fight. Captain Lisa said quietly, "Earth Command sent orders while you were listening to the translations. Where to return? To human space immediately. They don't want us getting involved in alien problems." Jake nodded. It made sense. Humanity was small and weak compared to the great alien empires. If species with thousands of years of experience couldn't stop the swarm, what could humans do? But as Jake sat there, he thought about something else his grandfather had said. Old Man had fought against enemies who seemed impossible to beat. He had survived when smarter, stronger armies had failed. And he had always said the same thing. "Son, sometimes the best way to kill a monster isn't to be stronger than it. Sometimes you just have to be meaner." Jake looked at his crew. They were all young, barely out of their 20s. They had joined the space service to explore and discover new worlds. None of them had signed up to fight monsters from the dark between stars. But Jake could see something in their eyes, the same thing he felt in his heart. Those alien voices calling for help had touched something deep inside them, something that made them human. "Lisa, send a message to Earth Command," Jake said finally. "Tell them we received the distress signals and we're investigating. Tell them it might take a while to get back." Lisa stared at him. "Jake, you're talking about disobeying. Direct orders. They could court-martial you for this." Jake smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf makes when it sees prey. Lisa, somewhere out there, is something that thinks it can eat every living thing in the galaxy. Thinks it. Nothing can stop it because it's beaten every army that's tried. He turned to look at his crew, seeing the same hard look growing in their eyes. But there's one thing that monster doesn't know about yet. It doesn't know about humans. It doesn't. No, we come from a world where everything tries to kill you, where you have to fight for every breath you take. It doesn't know that when humans see something evil, something that hurts innocent people, we don't run away. Jake stood up and walked to the navigation station, set course for the Kepler station. That was the last known position of the refugee. "Ships. We're going to find out exactly what this swarm is and how to kill it." As the new horizon turned toward the outer rim, toward danger and darkness, Jake felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he was finally going home. Because for humans, home wasn't a place. Home was the fight to protect the things you loved. The swarm was about to learn what humans did best. So they were about to learn what happened when you threatened. Something a human cared about. Jake had a feeling that lesson was going to hurt. The Kepler station looked like a broken toy floating in space. Jake Morrison stared at the massive structure through the New Horizons viewing screen and felt his heart sink. The station had once been beautiful, a shining example of alien engineering that could house millions of people. Now half of it was dark and the other half flickered with emergency lights. "Captain, I'm reading life signs," said Amy Carter from her station. "Thousands of them, but they're all crammed into the core sections. It looks like they shut down most of the station to save power." Jake nodded. The refugees had been living here for weeks, maybe months. They were probably running out of everything. They needed to survive. "Lisa, take us in slowly. I don't want to scare them." Commander Lisa Torres guided the ship toward the station's docking bay. As they got closer, Jake could see the damage more clearly. Long black scars covered the station's hull like something had tried to eat through the metal. Some sections were completely missing, torn away by forces Jake couldn't imagine. When they docked, Jake led a small team onto the station. The air tasted stale and recycled too many times. The corridors were packed with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Jake recognized some species from the Galactic databases, but many were completely unknown to him. They all had the same look in their eyes, the hollow stare of people who had seen too much horror. An alien that looked like a tall, thin bird approached them. Its feathers were dull and patched, and it moved like it was very tired. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Republic," it said in broken human language. "You are the ones who answered our call?" I'm Captain Morrison of the human vessel New Horizon, Jake replied. We received your distress signals. We're here to help. Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was bitter and sad. Help, Captain, with respect. You are human. Your species is very young, very small. The greatest fleets in the galaxy have tried to help. They are all gone now. Jake understood the alien's doubt, but he had to know more. Tell me about the swarm. Everything you know. Veltar led them through the crowded corridors to a large meeting room. Inside, representatives from dozens of species were gathered around a holographic display. The image showed a section of the galaxy with red dots marking systems that had gone dark. 3 months ago, the swarm appeared in the outer rim, Veltar began. At first we thought it was just pirates or raiders, single ships attacking trade routes. But then entire colonies stopped responding to communications. A blue-skinned alien with 4 arms stepped forward. I am Captain Zexai of the Altarian Defense Force. What remains of it? His voice was heavy with grief. We sent scout ships to investigate. They found worlds stripped clean, not destroyed, consumed. The rock, the atmosphere, even the metal. In the ground, all of it gone. Jake felt his stomach turn cold. What do you mean consumed? Another alien, this one covered in silver scales, spoke up. The swarm doesn't just destroy, Captain Morrison. It feeds. It takes the matter, the energy, even the life force of everything it touches. And it uses what it takes to make itself stronger. The holographic display changed, showing images that made Jake's crew gasp. Ships that looked like they were made from living flesh and metal twisted together. Creatures that might once have been people, but now had mechanical parts grafted onto. Their bodies' eyes that glowed with unnatural light. This is what becomes of those the swarm captures, Veltar said quietly. They are not killed. They are changed. Their bodies become part of the swarm's army. Their minds become part of its intelligence. Every person it takes makes it smarter and more dangerous. Chief Engineer Ben Parker, who had joined Jake's team, studied the images carefully. How does it work? It's a consumption process, I mean. Captain Zexai activated another display. Our scientists called it essence drain. The swarm somehow pulls the life energy out of living things. But it's not just biological. It can drain the power from ships, the energy from stars, even the quantum fields that hold matter together. Jake looked at the red dots on the galactic map. There were so many of them, and they were spreading toward the core worlds where the major civilizations lived. How many people in the attacked systems? Veltar's feathers rustled sadly. Perhaps 50 billion souls. All gone in 3 months. The room fell silent. Jake tried to imagine 50 billion people, but the number was too big to understand. It was more than the entire population of Earth, multiplied many times over. What about your fleets? Lisa asked. Surely the combined forces of the galaxy could stop it. Captain Zek's high S4 arms moved in what Jake guessed was their version of a shrug. We tried everything. The Altarians sent our most advanced battle fleet, 2,000 ships with weapons that could crack moons. The swarm absorbed them in hours. Our weapons made it stronger. Our technology became part of its arsenal. The Council tried using their psychic warriors, another alien added. Beings who could destroy armies with their minds alone. The swarm drained their mental energy and turned them into servants. Jake was beginning to understand the scope of the problem. Every conventional weapon, every advanced technology, every special power the aliens possessed had failed. The swarm had turned their strengths against them. Has anyone tried unconventional approaches? Jake asked. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. What do you mean? Veltar asked. Jake thought about how to explain it. These were ancient, civilized species. They had lived in peace for thousands of years. They solved problems with technology and diplomacy, not with the kind of brutal thinking that came naturally to humans. On Earth, when we have a problem we can't solve with normal methods, we try different approaches. We think like the enemy. We use tactics they don't expect, such as Captain Zexa asked. Jake looked at Ben Parker, who was still studying the technical data about the swarm. Ben, what do you think? Is it from an engineering perspective? Ben was quiet for a moment, then said something that made all the aliens stare at him. "It's not a military force, it's a parasite." The room erupted in confused chatter. Veltar raised a wing for silence. "Explain what you mean, human? Look at how it spreads," Ben said, pointing to the holographic display. "It doesn't attack the strongest targets first. It goes for the weakest, the most isolated. It consumes them and uses their strength to attack bigger targets. That's not how an army works. That's how a disease spreads." Jake felt something click in his mind. "Ben, if it's like a parasite, then we don't fight it like an enemy army. We fight it like an infection." The aliens looked even more confused. "How do you fight an infection that can consume fleets?" Veltar asked. Jake smiled, and for the first time since arriving at the station, he felt hopeful. "You don't fight the infection directly. You attack its life cycle. You cut off its food supply. You poison the environment it needs to survive." Lisa caught on quickly. "Sometimes you use one infection to fight another." The alien representatives looked at each other with expressions Jake couldn't read. Finally, Captain Zexai spoke. "Captain Morrison, with respect, this swarm has consumed civilizations that had millions of years to develop their military sciences. How can your species, which has barely left its home system, hope to succeed where we have failed?" Jake looked around the room at all the frightened, desperate aliens. These were good people who had lived their entire lives in peace. They had never learned to think like predators because they had never needed to. But humans were different. Humans came from a world where everything tried to kill you, where survival meant learning to kill back. "Because," Jake said quietly, "you've been trying to fight it with honor and advanced technology. We're going to fight it like the monster it is. Humans are very good at killing monsters." He turned to his crew. "Amy, I want you to analyze every piece of data they have about swarm behavior. Ben, study their technology and figure out how to turn it against itself. Lisa, start planning an infiltration mission." "Infiltration?" "Captain, no one who has gotten close to the swarm has ever returned." Jake's smile became sharper, more dangerous. "That's because they went in trying to fight it. We're going in to learn how it thinks. Then we're going to teach it what happens when you threaten something humans care about." As his crew got to work, Jake stared at the red dots on the galactic map. Somewhere out there, the swarm was still feeding, still growing stronger, but it had made one mistake. It had hurt innocent people, and now humans knew about it. The monster was about to learn that Earth's children were monsters too, when they needed to be. The message Jake Morrison sent to Earth was simple. "We need everything you've got. Send the killers." 3 weeks later, Jake stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station and watched the human fleet arrive. Ships appeared out of hyperspace. One by one, each one different from anything the aliens had ever seen. These weren't exploration vessels or science ships. These were warships, built for one purpose, to destroy things that needed destroying. The ESS Reaper led the fleet, a massive, black ship that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of metal. Its hull was covered in weapon ports and scanner arrays that could track a single molecule across an entire star system. Behind it came smaller ships, each one designed for specific types of killing, stealth ships that could hide in the shadow of a photon, assault vessels built to ram through planetary defenses, hunter-killers that could track their prey across multiple dimensions. Ambassador Veltar stood next to Jake, his feathers trembling as he watched the human fleet take formation. "Captain Morrison, those ships, they look like instruments of death." "That's exactly what they are," Jake replied. He wasn't proud of it, but he wasn't ashamed either. "Humans have been fighting wars for our entire history. We got very good at it." A new voice spoke from behind them. "Actually, we got too good at it. That's why we built these ships." Jake turned to see Admiral Frank Cooper walking toward them. The Admiral was an older man with gray hair and scars on his hands that spoke of years in combat. He moved like a predator, quiet and careful, always watching for threats. "Admiral Cooper," Jake said with relief. "Wasn't sure Earth Command would send anyone they didn't want to," Frank said honestly. "The politicians thought this was too dangerous, too far from home. But when the military council saw your reports about this swarm, everything changed. He looked out at the fleet. We've been preparing for something like this for 50 years. Veltar looked confused. Preparing? But your species has only been in space for 100 years? How could you prepare for something you had never seen? Frank smiled, but it was a cold smile that made the aliens step back, because we've seen it before, just on a smaller scale. Humans have dealt with plagues, with invasive species, with things that spread and consume everything in their path. We know how to fight something like this. A new ship appeared in the fleet formation, smaller than the others, but somehow more frightening. It was pure white, with no visible weapons or engines. It just floated there like a ghost. What is that? One? Veltar asked nervously. That's the Void Hunter, Frank said. It's designed to operate in the space between dimensions, places where normal matter can't exist. We built it based on theories about what might be hiding in the dark between stars.
Ow.
Jake stared at the ship. He knew something like the swarm existed, we suspected, Frank said. Earth scientists have always wondered what was out there in the deep dark. What kinds of things might evolve in the space between galaxies, feeding on the energy that leaked out from living worlds? He paused. We decided to be ready, just in case. More ships arrived. Troop transports filled with soldiers who had trained. In Earth's most dangerous places, mobile laboratories staffed by scientists who studied the galaxy's deadliest organisms, even civilian contractors who specialized in cleaning up after disasters. Dr. Rachel Barnes materialized next to them seemingly. Appearing from nowhere, she was a small woman with sharp eyes and hands that never stopped moving. Admiral, I've reviewed the alien data about this swarm. It's fascinating. Veltar looked disturbed. Fascinating. Doctor, this creature has killed billions of people. Nodded absently. Yes, very sad. But the biological mechanisms are incredible. It's like a virus, a parasite, and a hive mind all rolled into one. I've never seen anything like it. She turned to Frank. I want to study it, capture some samples. If possible? Absolutely not, Veltar squawked. No one who has gotten close to the swarm has survived. It will consume you like all the others. Rachel smiled, and Jake realized where he had seen that expression before. It was the same smile a cat made when it spotted a mouse. That's where you're wrong, Ambassador. See, the swarm has only encountered prey species so far, civilized races that live in peace and try to solve problems with diplomacy. She gestured toward the human fleet. But humans aren't prey. We're predators. We come from a world where everything tries to kill you, and we learn to kill back. We're not going to try to reason with this thing or negotiate with it. We're going to hunt it down and tear it apart. Captain Sam Miller arrived on the station a few hours later. He was the commander of the Reaper, and Jake could tell immediately that he was dangerous, now moved like liquid violence barely contained in human shape. His eyes never stopped scanning for threats, and his hand never moved far from the weapon. At his side, Captain Morrison, Sam said, when they met in the station's command center. I read your reports. This swarm thing ate an entire Altarian fleet. In a matter of hours, Jake confirmed. Like 2,000 ships just absorbed like they were nothing. Sam nodded thoughtfully. The Altarians fight like aristocrats. All honor and formal tactics. They probably announced themselves and demanded surrender before attacking. He looked at the tactical displays showing swarm movements. This thing is used to prey that follows rules. We're going to show it what happens when the rules don't apply. Sergeant Major Tony Hall joined the meeting. Tony was built like a mountain and had scars that told stories Jake didn't want to hear. He commanded the death squads, human soldiers, who volunteered for missions that no one expected them to survive. Sir Tony said to Admiral Cooper, my boys are ready. We've been training for asymmetric warfare against superior forces our whole careers. This is what we do. The alien representatives looked more and more disturbed as they listened to the humans' plan. These weren't heroes talking about glory and honor. These were exterminators discussing the most efficient ways to kill something. Captain Miller, Veltar said hesitantly, your people seem very ... aggressive. Are you certain this is wise? The swarm learns from every encounter. If you attack it directly, it will adapt your tactics and become even stronger. Sam looked at the alien with amusement. Who said anything about attacking it directly? Ambassador, you've been thinking about this all wrong? We see an enemy fleet to be defeated in battle. We see a pest infestation to be eliminated. He activated a holographic display showing the swarm's movement patterns. Look at how it spreads. It follows predictable paths, always seeking the richest feeding grounds. It's like a swarm of locusts, and we know how to deal with those. Double quotes, Dr. Barnes stepped forward. We're not going to fight the swarm's strengths. We're going to exploit its weaknesses. Every biological system has vulnerabilities. Every computer program has bugs. This thing might be powerful, but it's not perfect. Jake felt a chill of excitement as he listened to his fellow humans' plan. These people weren't just soldiers and scientists. They were specialists in violence, experts in destruction. They had spent their entire careers learning how to kill things that were bigger, stronger, and more advanced than they were. The galaxy's civilized species had tried to fight the swarm with honor and superior technology. It failed because they approached it as a military problem to be solved with military solutions. But humans saw it differently. They saw a predator that had gotten used to easy prey, a monster that had never encountered something willing to be a bigger monster. Admiral Cooper looked around the room at the assembled human officers and alien representatives. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the largest extermination operation in galactic history. When we're done, the swarm will be nothing but a bad memory. He turned to the viewing screen where the human fleet waited in perfect formation. It's time to show this thing what Earth's children learned in the dark between the stars. It's time to prove that humans aren't just another prey species. The Admiral's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every person in the room. It's time to hunt. Outside, the human fleet began to move, spreading out across the star system like a pack of wolves surrounding their prey. The swarm had spent months learning to hunt civilized species. Now it was about to learn what it felt like to be hunted by something that came from hell and liked it there. The Proxima system had been beautiful once. 3 worlds covered in blue oceans and green forests, home to 20 million peaceful aliens who grew food for half the outer rim. Now the system was dark and silent, consumed by something the galaxy had never seen before. Captain Sam Miller stood on the bridge of the Reaper and watched the swarm through his ship's scanners. What he saw made his blood run cold, but not with fear. With hunger, the swarm had made a mistake. It had given humans something to kill. Captain, said Communications Officer Nina Brooks, I'm reading massive swarm activity throughout the system. Thousands of ships, all different designs. It looks like they're harvesting the last planet. Sam nodded. The swarm had learned to use the technology of every species it consumed. Altarian energy weapons, Zephyrian stealth systems, crystalline shield generators. It was like facing the combined fleets of a dozen civilizations all working together. But Sam had fought combined fleets before. The trick wasn't to match their strength. The trick was to make their strength useless. All ships. This is Reaper Actual, Sam said into his communicator. Remember, we're not here to fight them. We're here to starve them. Execute Plan Famine. Human fleet spread out across the system, but not toward the swarm ships. Instead, they headed for every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris, floating in space. What happened next would have shocked any alien observer. The humans began destroying everything. Fusion charges, cracked asteroids into powder. Plasma cannons melted moons into glowing slag. Even the system star became a target as human ships fired quantum torpedoes into its core, destabilizing the nuclear reactions that kept it burning. On Kepler Station, Ambassador Veltar watched the tactical display with horror. Admiral Cooper, your ships are destroying the entire system. What about the planets? What about the people who might still be alive down there? Admiral Frank Cooper stood beside him, watching the destruction with cold satisfaction.
Ambassador.
Those people died weeks ago when the swarm arrived. What's down there now isn't people anymore. It's raw material for the enemy. The swarm reacted exactly as the humans had predicted. Its ships swarmed toward the human fleet, trying to stop the end. Systematic destruction of everything in the system. But when they arrived, the human ships were already gone, jumped to hyperspace and heading for the next target. Sir, Nina Brooks reported, swarm ships are trying to pursue, but they can't match our jump speed. They're designed for consumption. not chase. Sam smiled. Good, let them follow. Every minute they spend chasing us is a minute they're not feeding. He looked at the star map showing 12 more systems in the region. All ships jumped to Rally Point Beta. Time for round 2. Dr. Rachel Barnes worked frantically in her mobile laboratory aboard the science vessel Darwin's Revenge she had managed to capture several pieces of swarm technology during the first engagement, and what she found fascinated and horrified her in equal measure. Admiral, she called over the communicator, I've analyzed the swarm samples. You need to see this. Holographic display in the lab showed the internal structure of a swarm ship. It wasn't built like any normal spacecraft. Instead, it was grown like a living organism. But parts of it were clearly mechanical, and other parts were something else entirely. These sections here, Rachel pointed to glowing areas in the display, are made from the life force of absorbed victims. The swarm doesn't just take their bodies and technology, it takes their souls and uses them as fuel. Frank stared at the display. Even after decades of warfare, this was beyond anything he had seen. How is that possible? I don't know, Rachel admitted. But I do know this. The soul energy is what makes the swarm ships so powerful. Let's cut off that supply and they become just normal ships, dangerous, but not invincible. She activated another display showing the quantum signatures of different swarm vessels. Look at this. Each ship has a unique energy pattern based on the species it consumed. Altarian ships glow blue, Zephyrian ships pulse with green light. But there's something else. The display zoomed in on a section of readings that made Frank's eyes widen. Those energy patterns are degrading. The souls trapped inside the ships are fighting back. They're trying to break free.
Yes.
Rachel nodded excitedly. Exactly. The swarm thinks it has perfect control, but consciousness is harder to contain than it realized. If we can find a way to amplify that resistance, we can turn their own victims against them, Frank finished. Doctor, I want you to work on that immediately. What do you need? I need to get closer to active swarm ships, close enough to interface with their systems directly. Frank almost said no immediately. It was suicide. But then he remembered what humans had learned long ago. Sometimes the only way to kill a monster was to let it think it was winning. I'll get you your chance, Doctor, but we're going to do this the human way. 3 days later, the swarm arrived at the Kepler system, following the trail of destruction. The humans had left behind. The alien refugees watched in terror as thousands of swarm ships emerged from hyperspace, blocking out the stars with their dark hulls. But the humans were ready, Captain. Jake Morrison piloted a small stealth ship called the Shadow directly into the heart of the swarm formation. His mission was simple: plant Dr. Barnes' virus in the swarm's communication network and get out alive. Jake, came Amy Carter's voice over the communicator. I'm reading massive energy buildup in the swarm ships. They're preparing to drain the station. Jake felt sweat running down his face as swarm ships passed close enough to touch his hull. The stealth systems were holding, but barely. One wrong move, and he would become part of the thing he was trying to destroy. Almost there, he whispered. Ben, is the virus ready? Chief Engineer Ben Parker's voice was tight with concentration.
Ready, Captain?
But remember, once we upload this thing, every swarm ship in the system will know we're here. Jake reached the central swarm vessel, a massive thing that pulsed with the trapped souls of 1 billion victims. He could almost hear them screaming as he attached Ben's hacking device to the ship's hull. Upload complete, Ben reported. Get out of there now. But as Jake tried to pull away, something went wrong. The swarm ship's hull suddenly became soft, like living flesh, and began growing around his small vessel. Tendrils of dark matter reached out to grab him. They've got me, Jake said calmly. Tell Sam to execute the final phase. On the Reaper, Sam Miller watched Jake's ship disappear into the swarm vessel. For a moment, he felt the old human emotion of loss. But then Dr. Barnes' virus activated. Everything changed. The trapped souls inside the swarm ships began to fight back. Altarian spirits turned their ship's weapons on their neighbors. Zephyrian ghosts activated stealth systems to hide from their own fleet, The organized swarm dissolved into chaos as the victims struck back at their captors. "All ships, attack now," Sam commanded. "Hit them while they're confused." The human fleet emerged from hiding and struck with every weapon they had. But these weren't the advanced energy weapons the aliens used. These were crude, brutal human weapons. Nuclear warheads that poisoned everything they touched. Kinetic. Kill vehicles that punched through shields with pure momentum. Even biological weapons designed to eat metal and circuitry. The swarm tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Human weapons were simple, ugly, and effective. They didn't rely on advanced technology or exotic physics. They just destroyed things through brute force and human ingenuity. Captain Miller, Nina Brooks, reported with excitement. "Swarm ships are retreating. They're leaving the system." Sam watched the enemy flee and felt a cold satisfaction. The swarm had learned its first lesson about humanity. But the war was far from over. In the wreckage of the central swarm ship, Jake Morrison crawled out of his damaged vessel. Somehow Dr. Barnes's virus had freed the souls trapped inside, and they had protected him during the chaos. As he looked around at the liberated spirits of the swarm's victims, he realized something important. The humans weren't just fighting to save the galaxy. They were fighting to free everyone the swarm had ever taken. And that was a fight worth dying for. The swarm was learning what it meant to face Earth's children. The humans were just getting started. 3 months after the first human attack, the galaxy held its breath. The swarm had retreated to the galactic core, the dangerous region at the center of the Milky Way, where massive black holes and radiation storms made travel nearly impossible. Every surviving alien species prepared for what they thought would be a final desperate battle to keep the monster from escaping to other galaxies. They arrived at the core to find that humans had been there for weeks, Captain. Julie Watson commanded the Void Hunter, humanity's most secret weapon. Her ship existed in the space between dimensions, hunting swarm fragments that tried to escape through hyperspace. For the past month, she had been systematically tracking down every piece of the enemy that tried to run. "Captain," said her navigator, Lieutenant Mark Brown, "we've got the last cluster cornered in the Sagittarius black hole system. They can't jump out without going through us." Julie nodded. The swarm had learned to fear human pursuit. Every time it tried to split up and spread, Julie's team was there to destroy the fragments before they could grow strong again. The monster that had once consumed entire fleets now ran like a frightened animal. "Good," Julie said. "Signal Admiral Cooper. Tell him we're ready for the final phase." On Kepler Station, Admiral Frank Cooper stood before the assembled leaders of every surviving alien civilization. These beings represented thousands of years of galactic history, and they all looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Frank said, "in 1 hour, we will end this war. Not with a battle, but with an execution." Ambassador Veltar shifted nervously. "Admiral, our combined fleets are ready to assist. Surely you don't intend to face the swarms." "Final form alone." Frank smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring expression. "Ambassador, you've done enough. Your people have suffered enough. This is human work now." He activated a holographic display showing the galactic core. Red dots marked the positions of thousands of swarm ships, all clustered around the central black holes like insects around a dying flame. "Dr. Barnes has spent the last 3 months studying swarm biology," Frank continued. "She's created something special for this occasion. Synthetic consciousness designed specifically to poison the swarm's hive mind." Dr. Rachel Barnes stepped forward, holding a small device that hummed with strange energy. "This little beauty mimics the soul energy the swarm feeds on. But it's actually a virus designed to eat artificial intelligence from the inside out. When the swarm tries to absorb it, the virus will spread through their entire network." Captain Zexai of the remaining Altarian forces looked doubtful. "Doctor, with respect, the swarm has adapted to every weapon we've used against it. What makes you think this will be different?" Rachel's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Because this isn't a weapon, Captain. It's bait. And humans are very good at hunting with bait." The final battle began not with the thunder of weapons, but with silence. The human fleet approached the galactic core like ghosts, their ships running silent and dark. They had learned to move like predators, invisible, until the moment they struck. Captain Sam Miller watched from the Reaper as the swarm ships detected their approach. The enemy had grown massive in its final retreat, absorbing everything it could find in the core systems. Individual swarm vessels were now the size of moons, pulsing with the stolen life force of billions of victims. "Sir," reported Nina Brooks, "the swarm is trying to communicate. It's offering to negotiate." Sam laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "Tell it we don't negotiate with plagues. We cure them." The swarm attacked first, sending waves of absorbed ships against the human fleet. Altarian cruisers with weapons that could crack planets, Zephyrian stealth fighters that phased in and out of reality, crystalline dreadnoughts that could survive inside a star, but the humans didn't try to match firepower with firepower. Instead, they did something the swarm had never seen before. They retreated. "All ships fall back to minimum safe distance," Sam ordered. "Let it come to us." The swarm pursued, sensing victory. Its ships spread out across the star system, trying to surround the human fleet. It was exactly what the humans wanted. "Now, Dr. Barnes," Sam said quietly. Rachel Barnes activated her device, and the synthetic consciousness burst from the human ships like a wave of poisoned light. To the swarm's senses, it looked like the most delicious meal it had ever encountered. Billions of artificial souls, ready to be consumed and added to its collective power. The swarm opened its mind and fed. The virus hit the swarm's consciousness like acid, poured into an open wound. The synthetic souls didn't just resist absorption. They attacked the hive mind itself, eating through the quantum connections that held the collective intelligence together. On every swarm ship, the trapped souls of victims felt the network weaken and began to fight back with renewed strength. Altarian spirits seized control of weapon systems. Zephyrian ghosts turned stealth fields against their captors. The massive fleet began tearing itself apart as the liberated dead struck back at their murderers. But the humans weren't finished. "Julie, you're up," Sam said into his communicator. The Void Hunter emerged from hyperspace in the middle of the swarm formation. Captain Julie Watson had spent months learning to navigate the spaces between dimensions, and now she used that knowledge to strike where the enemy was most vulnerable. "Firing quantum disruptor," Julie reported calmly. The weapon didn't destroy matter, didn't even damage the swarm ships directly. Instead, it attacked the very concept of the swarm's existence. Unraveling the quantum foundations that allowed the hive mind to function, across the fleet, swarm vessels simply stopped being. Not destroyed, not damaged, they ceased to exist as if they had never been built in the first place. The souls they had imprisoned were freed to find their rest. The matter they had stolen returned to the cosmic background from which it came. In less than an hour, the threat that had consumed half the galaxy was reduced to scattered debris and fading energy signatures. On Kepler Station, the alien representatives watched the tactical displays in stunned silence, where moments before, there had been thousands of enemy contacts. Now there was nothing but empty space and the quiet beeping of human communication systems. "Is it over?" Veltar whispered. Admiral Cooper nodded. "It's over. The swarm is dead, and every soul it took has been freed." But even as the aliens began to celebrate, Cooper's expression remained serious. He had seen what humans could do when they decided something needed to die, and it worried him almost as much as the swarm had. "Ambassador," he said to Veltar, "I want you to remember something. Humans didn't save your galaxy because we're heroes. We saved it because innocent people were being hurt, and we don't allow that when we can stop it." He gestured toward the human fleet, now regrouping in perfect formation. "But remember also that we are very good at killing things that need to die, and we will always be watching." The alien species that had called for help now understood what they had unleashed. Humanity had revealed itself to be the galaxy's apex, predator, capable of violence that civilized minds could barely comprehend. As the human fleet prepared to return to Earth's territory, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of his rebuilt ship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were other threats, other monsters that might one day threaten innocent life. But they would find Earth's children waiting for them, patient, deadly, and absolutely without mercy for anything that preyed on the weak. The galaxy was safe, but it would never be the same. The Deathworlders had emerged from the shadows, and everyone now knew what humans really were. They were the things that even monsters learned to fear.